You're only in the band 'cause you're our mate. We'll laugh and we'll play till late in the States. Chasing dreams and sounds in the heart of our town. Strumming chords of friendship never let you down.
Hello, welcome to this video, and on this video I'm going to go through and rank the 10 musicians who happen to be there. What do I mean by that? And how am I going to rank them? I'm going to rank them by their happen to be there-ness, okay? So, what do we mean by this? Well, you know, I wanted to be a successful musician since I was a very young lad. And I tried really, really hard. I practiced my instrument and I learned my instrument and I joined lots of bands. But then when you look at certain bands, you go, well, that band's famous and they've all become millionaires. But when you look at that person in the band, they just happen to be in the band because they were there. In some cases, they don't even play the instruments or sing. In some cases, they don't seem to do anything at all but make it worse. And the more worser they make it, right, just because they happen to be there, right, the more they rank on this list. You understand? It's very simple. These are bloody 10 useless musicians who just happen to be friends with the band. That might be a better title, actually. It's got more hate in it, hasn't it? And that always works well on the internet. So I might go with that one. So shall we just kick off straight away? Because I don't want to be here for an hour. I don't want to be spending too much time on each of these no-opers. Right, now, I've got to say, most of the people on here seem like thoroughly decent people. I've got nothing against these people, so I don't want to character assassinate them in the way I normally do, because they seem very nice. What's interesting is so many of these do seem nice because they're not musicians, of course, so they don't have that sort of, psychotic, neurotic madness that musicians have, which I'm sure I have as well. But these are regular guys, but not all of them. Some of them seem very strange. Now, at number 10, I have put a character on here just to set the tone so we know what we're dealing with. Number 10 is usually the, bog standard. And with this type, this guy, he's very iconic, right? People will have posters all over their walls of this person. Some people think that he was a decent chap, and other people think that he was not a decent chap. So it's actually very interesting. And I think he was actually quite a creative fellow. So we will get into what I think about this guy. And this guy is, at number 10, Sid Vicious. So the Sex Pistols was a band formed in the mid-70s. It ushered in, whether they were the sort of poster boys of the British punk scene. A lot of the stuff they did became what we associate with punk, a lot of the iconic elements. There was a tension in this band between the creativity of John Lydon, who I believe was an actual creative genius, a poet and a visionary, an English poet and an English visionary, although he had his Irish roots, which I think is very important. And then on the other side, the sort of shallow Svengali-ism of Malcolm McLaren. And that was always a tension in this band. And in between that, what we had was an actually great rocking band. Steve Cook, Steve Jones, and the one who looks like Brian Ferry. Come on, Glenn Matlock, right? They're a decent band. I once saw them live. They rocked. You can't rock like that. I've dealt with student bands. I know when someone can rock. They weren't like a student band. They rocked. Right, they weren't virtuosos. They're not Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but they could play. They were a cooking band. They were basically a cooking rock band. It's what all pop and rock music's based upon. But then John Lydon drops in, and with his sort of imagery, this sort of incredible imagery that goes back into the history of the England, and then the shallowness of Malcolm McLaren trying to make out that this was just all, flim flam, and all that type of stuff, created this incredibly iconic band that did write some incredibly great songs. I can hear that, and I'm sure some of you can hear that. But as time went on, this sort of back and forth goes on. And what's very interesting is that a friend of John Lydon, right, Sid Vicious, who was his real name? John Ritchie, was it? He's the guy. We all know you're in a band, but you're concentrating on being a band, but you're out in the circuit and you have a mate all he concentrates is being cool. And they're usually quite artsy-fartsy. Sid Vicious came from quite a broken home and had a lot of actual stuff behind him that had caused a lot of sort of his head not being right. He'd gone to art college and he seemed to be a very creative person. And he had a look, and I think he's friends with John Lydon. He gets brought into the fold. And Malcolm McLaren can see, oh my God, we found our Elvis Presley. This is our Elvis Presley. And so he drops into the band and he literally cannot play. But what he does is he suddenly forms this other icon, because after John Lydon, the rest of the guys just look like regular guys. And the embodiment of punk is Sid Vicious. It's the embodiment. Of course, it does not go well at this point. He is thrown into a maelstrom. There's all sorts of things going on, including hard drugs. He meets Nancy Spungen. This seems to be a real toxic relationship. And then there's this mysterious thing where she gets stabbed to death and then he overdoses a few weeks later. My wife, who's a massive punk fan and massive Sex Pistols fan, is adamant that he did not kill Nancy. So I have to put that up, but other people do. So very iconic, like one of the most iconic people. But in terms of a bass player and a functioning member of this band, almost non-existent. I do give him that he did come out and sing some songs afterwards, like Eddie Cochran's song, Come On Everybody, was it? And he did I Did It My Way. And although he can't sing on it, his iconness delivers those songs. So he's not barren of any sort of musical talent, but he's pretty low, right? So I'm going to move on to number 9 now. This is really contentious. This guy can play, but I just don't think he can play at the level that was required for the situation he was in. This is going to be really contentious. This is what you're here for. At number 9, I've got Noel Redding from the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Right, Noel Redding was a folk musician that happened to be in London at the time. Right, Jimi Hendrix comes in. He is basically the greatest rock musician in the history of rock music. And he comes into London right when it's like this bustling thing. There's all this incredible music coming on. Hendrix just comes in and goes, what about this? And they know they're going to have to put a band. Charles Chandler goes, let's put a band together. Now on drums, they get Mitch Mitchell, and Mitch Mitchell's one of the greatest drummers in London at that time. But they also could have had Ainsley Dunbar, another brilliant drummer, and history would have been different. You know, someone said that as a comment, and I've just reiterated it, stolen it. But on bass, they get Noel Redding in. Now, Noel Redding, apparently he got the gig, as Jimmy said, because of his hair. Jimmy had the big afro. Mitch had the big afro, and I think they were looking for someone who played the bass who also had a big afro. Now, there must have been quite a few back then, but they went for Noel Redding. Noel Redding did backing vocals. I don't think he did it very well. I just don't think he had that feel and groove, right? Now, it doesn't seem to have affected the Hendrix group at all. That stuff's all amazing. But Noel Redding's input into that musically and creatively on the album sort of slowly diminishes over time. After Hendrix dies, he's in a band called Fat Mattress for a while, and then just disappears from view. My brother actually met him in the late 80s, early 90s out in Ireland. And he seemed to be happy out there. He never made any money out of it either. This argument where you could say, well, he had a cool haircut. I don't think Noel Redding was cool at all. Right? To me, he looks like Charles Hawtrey in an afro. Right? He's not cool. It just seems like he was very, very lucky to end up playing bass in the greatest rock band there's ever been. Jimi Hendrix is the top. He is the best. Right? I've said it over and over again. But he didn't let the side down, and he did it. And he got through it, and that's that. But I do feel that he did happen to just be there at the time, and that's why he got the gig. Right. So at number 8, I have got Meg White from the White Stripes. Now, the eagle-eyed of you who will sift through my 1,000 videos here will find that I did a whole video on Meg White, and I was very nice to her. And I actually said that I liked her drum parts very much, and I do. And the reason why I like them is it's the triumph of creativity over skill, and it proves that that can be the case. If you've got a strong singer-songwriter, some strong riffs, some grooves, some strong lyrics, then sometimes all you need is a thud in the right place and an interesting thud, which gives it a little bit of character. And you're aware that's what Meg White does. But of course, we know Meg White is there primarily because she was married to Jack White, and that's how she got the gig. Now, I feel that when I listen to the White Stripes, there's something genius about that band, but I have to be honest, as much as I do love Meg White's drumming, as a drummer, I can feel the sort of lack of fire and the lack of rockingness in those beats. They've got around it a little bit with production. And in a way, that's the charm of that band. I'm not criticising it, really. I'm just saying, I wonder what would have happened if they have had someone of a sort of Bonhamy groove. Maybe you ended up with the Black Keys, which in the end is too smooth compared to the White Stripes. I wondered when I got to this whether I would now put the knife in on Meg White, and I'm not going to. But the fact that she just happened to be married to Jack White, and you feel like they went, look, do you want to play drums in my band, and then you can come out with me, you know, we don't have to be apart, and no one else wants to play with me. That's what it seems like. They seem like those sort of, here we go, Andy always finds a way of getting in there. They seem like those sort of hip metropolitan sort of muso types that probably live in a loft somewhere, and they've got an entourage around them that will appreciate, you know, this guy getting up and doing his weird music with his wife playing the drums. It's all really cool. I get sent loads of videos from bands like this, and I watch them, and it's like some weird hippie psychedelic thing. And you think, well, do they have a job? They don't need a job, do they? They just do this all day long, and it's great. You know, it's all off and stoned and all this type of thing. And that's what I think the White Stripes were, really. But they must have had something good about them. Jack White knows what he's doing. I put her on the list, and now I've got here, I can't say much about her. So this is why these three are low. We're now going to start ascending the ladder of ineptitude and what's it called when you get when people nepotism. The ladder of ineptitude and nepotism. Right, at number 7, I've got Paul Bonehead Arthurs, otherwise known simply as Bonehead, who's the other guitarist in Oasis. Can you imagine this? You got Oasis, right? Oasis has got 2 brothers, and they're both rubbish, right? You got Noel Gallagher, who's an okay songwriter as long as he's ripping somebody off, and you got Liam Gallagher, who's an okay singer but has his own sort of stance and snarl, which was very appealing in 1994. Now, Noel Gallagher's not a great guitarist by any shout, but he's light years ahead to the other guy that's in the band, who's called Bonehead. And this bloke looks like he's wandered in from doing a bit of plastering, or maybe helping on your electrics. Hey mate, I fixed the flush on your bog. That's what Bonehead looks like. I mean, the other people in Oasis, they don't matter, do they? The drummer they got rid of, and they got Alan Watt, who was a great drummer, because every band has to have a great drummer in. Couldn't even tell you the bloke who's on bass, right? But at least he was playing the bass. But in Bonehead's case, I mean, if you took, all he can be doing is playing the basic open chords that Noel's playing at the same time, and just adding a bit to it, which normally in a band like that would just be double tracked by the guitarist. Then you go out and just get yourself a big guitar sound. So Bonehead stood in the background. Now, I know his name because of Bonehead. He's iconic in a way. He's iconic in his blandness, really. Now, there was a big hoo-ha last year because Oasis are getting back together this year. That hoo-ha hasn't carried on, has it? But I do wonder whether Bonehead will be there. And I think we need to start some sort of appeal to demand that Bonehead is on the Oasis gigs. Because in the end, Oasis do have some good songs, but they are the triumph of mediocrity in rock music, aren't they? They're that inherent, you know. There's something in the Foo Fighters that has its genetic material in Oasis. It's the rock band liked by people who don't understand rock music, isn't it, basically? And so if this mediocrity is going to come out and have one of the biggest tours in the history of 2025, I want Bonehead there. Because without Bonehead, it means nothing. Do you not understand what I'm saying? Without Bonehead in Oasis, Oasis is not Oasis without Bonehead. That is what we need to start saying and shouting from the turrets and steeples of this country. And you in America, you could shout from them if you had them, but you haven't because you've got no history. Don't have a go at the Americans just because you don't have a go at Bonehead. I don't. I knew I'd feel sorry for these people. They're nice, decent people. I reckon if you met Bonehead, he'd be all right. Not like those two narcissistic yobs that run that band. Their big mouths going all the time. Bonehead's just sat there. All he wants is to have a nice fried breakfast in the morning. That's all he's after. Newspaper, cup of coffee, get a nice war film on a Sunday afternoon. That's all I want. Good on you, Bonehead. And he can play the guitar. He obviously got some chords down. Stop knocking him. Right, at number 6, I have Chad Kroger's cousins. I don't even know if I've said that right. Chad Kroger. Chad Kroger is that bloke out of, is it Nickelback? It is Nickelback, isn't it? When I say Nickelback, it never sounds like it's the right word. Right, because it sounds like Stickleback. And Stickleback is this little fish that we have in the UK. And in the 1970s, when I was a kid, you would go out with your mum and dad and you'd jump into some river that had probably had rats weeing in it and had some awful disease that you're not allowed to go in. And we would catch sticklebacks. It was like a youth sort of thing that we did. Nobody catches sticklebacks anymore. They just don't catch sticklebacks anymore. So when Nickelback came out, I thought, well, that sounds like Stickleback. And they came out and they had this rock song that went massive all over the world. And then everybody decided they hated them. And I was like, well, I don't know why they hate them. There's a billion rock bands like this. I mean, what about Bush? We've got Bush here in the UK. No one has a go about that. Why does everyone hate Nickelback for? Because they're plodding in the, plodding rock. It's just Foreigner, but for the grunge times, you have to have it, right? Now, once Stickleback had become, I'm going to call him Stickleback, it will be much easier for me. Once Stickleback had become persona non grata in the world of proper rock, nobody wanted to be in the band. Even though there's all that money to be made, no proper rocker would want to be in the band. And so at this point, old Chad then brings in his cousins to play in it, Mike and Brandon. Mike and Brandon Kroger, let's champion them. That's what this is about. It's not about hate. I've realised this. I should have known this before I started. But you can't know these things till you get right in it, can you? This is not about hate. This is about us giving a cheer to these people. So let's do this. Right, so I want a big cheer for Sid Vicious for being the Elvis Presley of bloody punk and getting cut down at the age of 22 or whatever it is. And it all went wrong for him. So hip, hip, hooray. Yay! Then Noel Redding for being an average player in the best band in the world and being able to just hold it together because you got cool hair even though you look like a bit like Charles Hawtrey in an afro. Hip hip. Brilliant. Then we got Meg White, who happened to just be married to Jack White, right? And she, managed to batch the drums in just the right place. And she was a female drummer, and it's like she has had to put up. So I think she's a shy lady. She's had to put up with being the butt of every drummer joke in the world, hasn't she? Poor old Meg. She never asked for any of this. That's the thing. They never knew what they were getting into. Hip hip hooray for Meg. Yeah. What about Bonehead from Oasis? The heart of Oasis. The only decent, honourable thing in Oasis is Bonehead. Right, and if Bonehead's not on that tour, I'm going to be upset. Bonehead, if you're watching it, we're all behind you, mate. You should be there, unless you do want to be there. If you just want to say, but just message me and say, I didn't want to be there. In the end, I didn't want to do it, I'm quite happy doing what I'm doing. You get a bit of royalties coming in. I'm perfectly happy football with the kids on the weekend. So, let's have a big hip hip hooray for Bonehead. Yeah! I'm enjoying this now. This is getting good. Right, Mike and Brandon Kroger from Stickleback. Hip hip.
Hooray!
Right, so now we get to the next 5, and we go up a level now. This bloke has got to be one of the nicest blokes in the world. I think he's a nice bloke. And of course, one half of Wham, Andrew Ridgeley. Now, the thing with Wham is, George Michael was an inordinate talent, an incredible songwriter, a brilliant songwriter, an incredible singer, one of the greatest pop singers of the last 40 years, and one of the most intensely charismatic and handsome men. He had it all, but he never thought he had it all, right? Because before that, as a teenager, he'd been a spotty, slightly pudgy youth, hadn't he? Right? And he was Greek, so he got a name like George Theopotopoulos or something like that. I don't know what it actually is. So he becomes George Michael, right? But he doesn't want to be there on his own. Now, he could have been on there on his own. So he goes up his mate. Now, his mate is just a regular guy. He's not full of all the sort of worrying problems that, creative people have. George Michael was. But Andrew Ridgeley was. And he was just a straight down the line. And he was quite a handsome bloke, right? And he could stand with a guitar around his neck, which is all they needed. So he goes, Andrew, do you want to come in? And Andrew comes in, and then he's got a mate. So Andrew Ridgeley functioned as George Michael's well-balanced, also good-looking mate. And that was Wham. Now, they should have stayed as Wham all the time. And I would have been quite happy for Andrew Ridgeley to just basically just been there. Just sat there. He didn't have to do anything. Because I feel like George needed someone like that. Because once he became untethered for that, he goes all over the bloody place. And the poor bloke dying at 50 odd years old, it's terrible. And this really shows you, I think, it shows you the difference between creative genius and a regular fellow. And Andrew Ridgeley is fine. And of course, George being a decent bloke, he put him in on all the royalties. And Andrew Ridgeley's probably living the life of Riley now, old Andrew Ridgeley is. And of course, he's got older, right? And he's now got bald. And I don't know. He doesn't look very pop starry anymore. And he hasn't bothered to. I think that's what it is. He hasn't bothered to keep up his pop star looks because he does not care. Andrew Ridgeley is the example of the normal bloke, right? Just the normal bloke, not the cuckoo creative types, which I am, and some of you are. So we need to respect these people. Everybody needs an Andrew Ridgeley. I need an Andrew Ridgeley. I'm going to go and find one right now. Ridgeleys! Hip, hip, hooray for Andrew Ridgeley. Yay! I'm enjoying this. I like the hip, hip, hoorays. Right, at number 4, I've got everyone in the Prodigy except for Liam. Now, Liam is the bloke. The Prodigy is a dance group. It's one bloke in a room with a computer. And Liam, I've known people who've worked with Liam, and I've been told that he's like a little child prodigy. He sounds like this little kid. And even though he's grown up and he's a multi-millionaire, he's still just this little kid. He doesn't seem to get anything. He just lives in his own little world. Right? And there's not enough charisma there to build a band on. And so he goes and grabs 3 of his mates to basically just jump around. I've made these tracks. You don't have to sing. All you have to do is jump around. So there's these 3 blokes. Now, the only one I know is the white bloke called Keith Flint. Because Keith Flint did, even though he happened to be there, he's not like Andrew Ridgeley. He also had demons. And I think with him, because the other 2 blokes are fine, they didn't do much, right? But what's interesting, as time goes on, they're sat there and they go to Liam, well, all we do is jumping around in baggy clothes. Are we in the band or not? Well, of course you're in the band. I can't do it without you. I need somebody in baggy clothes jumping around. Well, can't we do something? Well, can you sing? Well, not really. What if we got a bit punky? Imagine rave and punk and putting that together. Do you want to do that? Yeah, I could just do a sort of a John Lennon and just shout. Here's the paper. I'll test ya. Oh, that sounds good. That sort of Cockney, bit of Norman Wisdom Cockney thing. You're like, yeah, I could do it like that. On the fella, all the way down. The chicken up on the bender. I can do that. Till the cows come home. Well, get yourself a good haircut. And I remember 1997, Firestarter came out. It was incredible. And that bloke in the baggy trousers, the baggy clothes with the long hair, he'd got these 2 bloody, he'd got these things like owl ears coming out, and he's there looking amazing, looking like, he looks like the new John Lydon. And it's like, and he comes out and he goes, I'm a Firestarter. And at that moment, Keith Flint was bored. Now, the other guys, they would jump around the background and just shout the odd word now and then. They're okay, right? They're the ones I should be really focusing on. I don't even know their names. So Keith Flint, I'm not going to actually put in. Keith Flint was the regular bloke that just happened to be there, but he went down in the depths to his soul, and even though he had no actual musical talent, he was able to bring something forth. That is the power of punk. Interesting, but the other blokes, what did they do? I'm trying to think of an iconic things that one of those blokes said. I can't. They didn't go, I got the poison, I got the remedy, I got the bitch at the remedy, I got the poison, I got the remedy, I got the bite at the beat on the remedy, I got the poison, I got the remedy, I got the bite at the beat on the remedy. Once I start doing that, I can't stop. I love that tune. I love Prodigy. I absolutely love them. I think they're amazing. Interesting fact, many years ago, I hooked up with this kid that was working in a drum shop, and he came for a couple of lessons, and he said he wanted to get into the industry. We had a chat about it, and I said, you need to get yourself a job where you know that these positions are coming up. And so he then applied for the job as A&R at Tama, got that job, and then because he was in that position, he then got the gig drumming for Prodigy. And I put that all down to me. I won't mention his name. You can go and research that to see if it's the true or not. Good lad. He's a good lad. Help me out. Right, so number 3. From the Happy Mondays, we have Beza. Right, now Beza couldn't even leap about like those 3 blokes in the Prodigy, right? He couldn't go down to the depths of his soul and pull out I'm a fire starter. Beza, all he could do was look at you as though he was off his head and walk backwards and forwards. I will show you what I need. I'll have to clear a space. Right? But basically, this is what Beza's input to agricultural life is. It's this. And on that, he has been able to build a proper bloody career. And even my mom likes Beza now. She doesn't even know who Beza is. Sean Ryder, massively talented, incredible lyricist, a great man. I love Black Grape. I absolutely love those albums. I wasn't keen on the Happy Mondays when they came out, but that's because I was in my Chick Corea's electric band phase, so I was wrong at that point. But Beza, I'm Puff doing that. I need to do that a bit more, don't I? Stop knocking Beza. I'm not even knocking Beza. He has built a career, right? He's got a beautiful wife, a lovely home, and he comes on. He's obviously not an intellectual, Do you know what I'm saying? He's not Douglas Murray or Jordan Peterson or the equivalent on the left. Do they have anybody intellectual like that on the left? Who's on the left like that? Come on, you must be able to come up with someone. Noam Chomsky. Well, it's definitely not Noam Chomsky because Noam Chomsky is like 100 years old. Someone intellectual on the left. Come on, Andy, you must be able to think of one. Nah, I can't think of one. Come on, there's one. It's probably because you don't know their names, because you're trying to obliterate what they've said. Come on, the left aren't all stupid. Anyway, he's not one of those, is he? Old Beza. He's a simple man, and he likes simple things. And I imagine that Beza, despite having the vague haze of being some drug fiend at some point, has not been affected so badly as Sean has, who seems to be holding on to life itself because of the indulgences in the past. I imagine that what saved Beza is fishing. He seems like the sort of English chap that would go fishing. Yes, this video is full up of facts that I'm just making up on the spot. I would like to go fishing with Beza. I want to do that with him. I used to go fishing with my dad, but I've lost all my skills. But I have still inherited from my dad his Hardy Hawkins fishing rod, which was made in the 1920s, and I would take that out of its display case back in Edwards Towers, and I would want to sit next to a pond somewhere fishing with my Hardy Hawkins and with the English gentleman that is Beza. I like these. This is why I won't criticise him. He's an English gentleman. I like Beza. He's a good bloke. Let's have a big hip hip hooray for Beza. Hip hip. Yay! I'm going to go quickly through number 2 and number 1 because they're pretty obvious. So I'll just do a summation up because I didn't want to go on too long for this video. So didn't want to do an hour on it. I could do an hour on anything I could. And we've had all the funny bits now. So number 2, I've got Linda McCartney, who was the daughter of the Eastman family that had something to do with photography. I think Kodak, basically. So they were multi-billionaires. So she was a rich lady. Obviously, Paul McCartney, knowing he was going to be rich, hooked up with Linda because he knew she would not be interested in his cash, unlike that one-legged lady later on. Linda would have never done that. But what Linda was interested in was being in the band, wasn't she? And she had to come in the band. And what should she do in that band? Not much, really. If she did sing, it was awful. Maybe she shook a tambourine. But that gave her the space to then come up with a business plan, which she did. And what she came up with was making vegetarian pies. So she then comes out of Wings, starts doing the vegetarian pies, and becomes a multi-millionaire again. And Paul McCartney looks around and goes, oh, this is the best wife I could ever have. She's never going to have one leg and try and steal all the money off me. And she never did, but then she died prematurely. And all their wealth couldn't change that. And there's a moral to that. And that's who I've got at number 2. So for her contribution to vegetarianism and not fleecing multi-millionaire musicians, let's have a big round of applause for Linda McCartney, the late, great Linda McCartney. Hope you, bless you, and love to you, Linda. Hip, hip, hooray! Yay! And at number 1, we've got the best of them all, right? And I love her. I think she's amazing. She's 92 years old. She's still going strong. She cannot be beaten. She's one of those little like one of those little dogs that you can't kill. You know, the sort of like they're like Terminator, but a little dog, right? And she's amazing. And I love her so much. Yoko bloody Ono. She's the best, right? This insane performance artist who stands there and gets people to cut her clothes off, you know, and do all that, and she screams and shouts and nobody understands it. And the thing is that she should have just been left alone in the world of art and nobody would have cared what she was doing. She'd just be in the encyclopedias and there's this batty Japanese woman that was asking people to chop clothes off her with the scissors and all that bit. But then she's going around, and of course John Lennon, who was a bit pretentious, right? He's not bothered about somebody stealing his millions like Paul McCartney, because Paul McCartney's a sensible one. He's got his pension sorted out. It's all John Lennon doesn't care. He's all out there, all Larry, and he's already got a wife, Cynthia Lennon. He hasn't thought it out. He's got married to someone he didn't mention. He's had a son as well. But then he goes out and he's at this art gallery, being all pretentious, going around looking at all the conceptual art, and he meets Yoko Ono and he thinks, that's the lady for me. I know how I'll woo her. I'll take her off to my house and we can make avant-garde music concrete. Lads, always works. Try it. And so they then hook up, right? And then Yoko Ono, who looks very quiet, but is insidious, realised that the greatest conceptual art that you could ever perform in the 20th century would be to collide conceptual art, which is essentially destructive, with the powerful force, which is the Beatles, which was completely constructive. And those two things to come together, matter and antimatter there. And she starts to work away. She sat in the background, and her whole intention is to pull the Beatles apart. And this would be the greatest feat of conceptual art of all time. She knows she's going to go down in history. She's going to go down in history as the woman that destroyed the Beatles, when she's not. But the misogyny of the Western class, you know, Western capitalist system will forever blame everything on Yoko, right? So there she is. They go to bed, you know, and lie in bed to try and stop world peace, you know. Lennon comes out and writes Imagine, which says there's no God, there's no heavens, it's easy if you try, there's no hell below us. All that is a lovely thing. And that becomes the moral code. The nihilist moral code is enacted by Yoko through John Lennon. Can you not see this? And that's the creed why we all live. It's completely nihilist. Imagine there's no this, imagine there's no that. You know, imagine all the people living life as one. We don't want that. I don't want your communal utopia. But John Lennon enacted it. He didn't know what he was saying. It was Yoko Ono who's going to walk off with all the bloody money. She pulled it off, didn't she? She pulled it off. Right. Now, 1980, John Lennon gets shot, doesn't he, by Mark Chapman. That's very strange, isn't it? And, of course, I suppose all the money went to her at that point. And so I'm sure she lives as a sort of custodian of Lennon's memory now. And if she's bored, she only has to put her out hand down the bloody side of a settee and pull out a cassette that he warbled on in 1977, put it into AI. Before you know, you got another Beatles song. You can't knock it, can she? Sean Lennon's gone on to do prog with older Les Claypool, which is strange. I didn't plan any of that, but now I've said it, it does seem to all hang true. She could well be the greatest conceptual artist of the 20th century. And in the same way Marcel Duchamp destroyed the art world with his fountain toilet thing that he put in the art gallery, she destroyed the commercial cultural world by destroying the Beatles. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to see some more, please like and subscribe. I've got a Patreon. Please come over to Patreon. There's tons of stuff there. I put a video up this week of me mowing the lawn, but it's sped up, which so it's quite comedic, and I did enjoy doing that one. And I put up a 20-minute guitar lesson where I explained some of the different approaches to improvisation that guitar teachers never tell you. That's just this week. There's a whole bunch of, there's a chat group there. There's all sorts of things for you if you want to nip over and join the fun there. I've also got a PayPal tip jar, which is that little bit of money is what I spend on the actual channel. The rest just keeps me and my family going. Anything extra that comes through the PayPal tip jar, I will then use to get stuff that I need, you know. And what I need here is an internet connection. That's what I really need here. So if you put some money in for that, I could get an internet connection, make my life a little bit easier. I'm talking to you at the moment with a really bad ear. I had a cold for about a month now. It keeps coming and going. I'm back again. I've got an infection up my nose, which is bothering me. My ear's hurting. My head's swimming around like this. Don't feel great whatsoever. But we soldier on, don't we? You know, and I think that may be why I've put myself so low in the... It's weird how these things come out. Why am I so low? I sat there, but now I'm sweating and not feeling well. I've dropped down to here, so I don't feel very well. So, you know... If you feel a bit sorry for me, then you could put somebody in the PayPal tip jar. Or become a member. You know, you could become a member here. You get to see some of the videos before they come out, and there's a whole ton of extra content. There's not enough for the members. I do appreciate those of you who become members, and I am thinking what I could do. And what I need to do is create some incredible membership content. But if you knew the amount of videos I'm making 4 videos a day at the moment. Which I like. It's a stream of consciousness. And out of that becomes an incredible thesis of the real intent of Yoko Ono. I thought I was just going to throw away that at the end, but I came up with something good. And you can't come up with stuff like that if you're thinking, you know, you need to have possibly an ear infection, be all bleary-eyed, you know, not slept enough, spent the whole night editing video and be here, and you just let the words come out, see what happens. I'm probably being taken over by some sort of evil spirit. That's what I often think. Yeah, it does make sense, doesn't it? Especially if you go over to my politics channel. We're done. See you on the next video. Thank you.